Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video. Today's video is featuring some products from the most recent Trinity Stamps release. This is the Hocus Pocus Gnomes. Totally love these, they're so cute. Simply Sentimental Halloween. And then I'm also going to be using the Full Moon Dies stencils, this A2 tree frame. And then later on I'm going to bring in the Embossed Edges Hills and Slopes, I think is what it is. And so here I'm just kind of marking out where my stamping needs to go because I will have to do a background for the idea that I had in mind. We're going to do 3 different cards with 3 different types of like glow or backlighting. One of them is backlighting, not all 3 of them. They all have like a little bit of a different kind of light source. And every Halloween, I always do because I like them and I think they look super cool. I always do a bunch of videos where we talk about how you could add this glow to your cards. And I thought that maybe this year I would approach it a little bit differently. And so I've split it up into 2 so we could really concentrate on the coloring for this one. And it's kind of breaking down the light source and how we would add the shading. And then the second part of the video is kind of pulling the whole thing together. And even if you're a person who's just interested in the coloring to, you know, make these cards, there are parts that are included in the second part of the video that have to do with the coloring. So I would just recommend checking out both of them. The second part will be up tomorrow. Today is the first part. So let's talk about this. So I am stamping. I use Neenah 80-pound solar white cardstock for my coloring. I'm happy with the way that it blends on there because alcohol markers blend in the fibers of your paper. So it gives me a good blend that I'm happy with. I'm also stamping in a alcohol marker safe ink. This one is Intense Black from Hero Arts, but there are several on the market that are really, really great. I am using, these are the background pieces that I will be building like my skies and ground and thing on. But I am stamping down the stamps into my scene to help me figure out where my light source is going to be. And this is how we're going to look at the shading. So for this exercise, we're just looking at the light source. We're not looking at the colors. And so I'm just coloring it in all grays. This one has the moon behind it, this huge moon behind it, which we would definitely see a lot during this time of year. And with something like this is what we call being backlit. So the vast majority of your stamp is really going to be quite dark. And that's one of the things that I want to stress, and you'll see even with me, and I, have been doing this quite a bit of time, that even I sometimes shy away from how dark it really should be. And I have to go back in and darken up my colors because this particular technique is very, very effective in a scene card, but it is very kind of a little scary because we're using so many dark colors. So basically in your center point is going to be your darkest. So the center of your hat, the center of the face, the core of the body. For this particular one, like those are going to be your darkest, the center of your broom. And then your shading will get lighter as you get out to the edge. If you really want it to be a bright glow, you can leave the edges white with no color on them. And then that way, when we have the moon behind us, all of those edges that are being lit up will look that much brighter. For this one, we have a light source that is across the top. So this little wizard has like this little fireball, plasma ball, whatever, some magic. He's got some magic, guys. So that's going to be my light source for this one, which means the top portion of his hat, of his staff, of his hands, where his nose is sticking out from his body, those are all going to catch light. Same thing with his beard. Most of his beard is going to be darker, but that tip at the bottom where it comes out will catch some light depending upon how bright our little, magic ball is. Same thing with the mustache. So here, again, we're looking at the parts that are kind of sticking out the furthest, whereas before we were doing just the edges. This time we're looking at what is sticking out the furthest and would catch the most light, as well as what is closest to our light source. So like I said, this is just the mapping for the grays, but we will go through and add the colors to it. This is just a really good exercise that you guys can do with any stamps that you have to try to figure out how to color your light source. So we're definitely be darker further away from the light source, lighter the closer we are. This one has a multi-directional kind of light because our witch is standing kind of behind our pot, and our pot is the light source. So whatever she's cooking up, whatever magic she's got going on in her little cauldron is going to be our light source. So where she's behind, it's definitely going to be coming up like her chin, the bottom of her nose, her hands, her arms, the section of her hair that is closest to the cauldron, the edge of her hat, the edge of like the buckle for the decoration that's on her hat and the little ribbon there. But these parts that are on the ground or the floor, these bottles, this one to the left is going to have its highlight on the right hand side because that's where the light source is, where the little like mortar and pestle and the bottle on the right hand side, their highlight's going to be on the left because the light source is on its left. So you kind of have to think of it as if like there were rays shooting out of this cauldron. Where would those rays hit the different things that we had going on in this scene? And again, it's, using darker colors, that's going to give us the most impact. And then those colors will get lighter as they get closer to the light source. So two of these are more of like a glow that one is backlit. It just is. It made the most sense to me. But the other two do have a glow. Now you can choose not to add the color to your stamp or your drawings or how, whatever you're doing. You can choose not to add the color to those. So it's not necessarily a colored glow and it is just a traditional light source. But the shading would be the same regardless on our gray section. So this is sped up just a little bit, not too much, but you can see now I'm adding the colors that I want things to be. So I want my broom to be a bit more yellow, her dress and her little ribbon at the top is purple, but I'm keeping the shading the same. So those darker colors, like my darkest color in my purple is a V09. That's definitely going to be right there in the center, just like you see this one on the left, where all of that dark color is. And again, you can kind of play around with this and you'll see even as like we go along that even I am like, ooh, it's really hard for me to use those darker skin tones to just like darken her face, even though I know that's what the scene calls for. It is very challenging for me to go in and make this as dark as it should be. And even when I'm coloring it here, just a heads up for part 2, like a little sneak peek preview of part 2, I have to make it darker for the scene to make sense and for it to really pop. I have to make it darker even than it is now, because it just, if you really want that drama and you really want it to pop and you want that effect of, oh, this moon is glowing so bright behind her, then she has to be dark. She just does. So as far as the blacks go, I've used the same combinations that we use for the gray shading, and left those edges a little bit I didn't leave any of them white. I think I colored them in with the C5. That was the lightest that I went out. But her face is too light, and I can see it, especially now Monday morning quarterbacking myself, her face is way too light. So we're moving on to the wizard here. And each time I'm just bringing in that guide I've created for myself so that I can double check and make sure that I am adding, the darker shading where it needs to be. Here, I felt like I was a little bit heavy-handed for the parts that I wanted to add the glow to. If that happens to you, you can always go in with a colorless blender and just lighten up those edges so that way you have more color that you can deposit in there. For this beard, his beard is actually white. And you guys have probably heard me say about a trillion bazillion times that when you're coloring white, you're just adding the shadows. Well, never has it been more true than when we're doing a night scene. So right now, his beard is going to look really, really gray. But I think you're going to be surprised at how white it looks when we put him in his scene. So for his little outfit, I went back and forth about whether or not to do purple. I ultimately decided to do it blue because I was going to do a green glow. That's something we probably should talk about. So when you're adding a glow to things, and you'll probably see with the Witch in the Cauldron that I ran into a little bit of trouble with the color selection that I made. But I made my color selection based on knowing that I was going to have a blue sky in all of them. So in the moon card, in the one where this little wizard's kind of on his little hilltop or mountaintop, and then where my witch is kind of tucked away into the woods, I was going to have that blue sky. And so I picked my glow color based on that blue. Now you can usually go with analogous colors. So next to blue, you're going to have a blue violet, a green, a blue green. All of those will work really well. And you can even go so far as a red with a blue. Now again, we run the risk of, them mixing and becoming purple. And the same thing goes in the other direction where, you can go green like we did here. But if you go yellow, you run the risk of them mixing and becoming green either way. But once you go probably 3 colors out, then you run into a problem because you've run into their complementary color. So for example, if I wanted to do this green glow, I would not have colored my wizard pink because yellow green's complementary color is a red violet, and when you mix them together they make brown. Now there are exceptions to that. You can select different colors on the color wheel, but that's just something to be aware of when you're selecting your glow color. Here I have added my glow color, to his hat, to my staff, to both his hands, his nose, his mustache, and then just kind of like the outskirts of his little wizarding outfit. And you can tell that it's like clearly a glow, but nothing makes it work as well as putting it into the scene. It just really comes together because you do need kind of that drama of the darker colors, which we will create with the ink blending in some of the Copic coloring that we're going to do in the background. Because like I said, in order to have that wow moment, you have to have that drama. So here with my little bubbling witch here, I chose to, again, I'm probably a little bit too light. It's not as bad here because we can kind of play with how bright is that little brew that she's cooking up. Is it going to be super bright, or is it going to be, just a little bit less. So this one you can play around with a bit more. The backlighting one is the one that really does need to be quite a bit darker in the middle. So where her face is, her hair, her body, her shoes, the inside part of her hat, those definitely need to be darker for you to have your wow moment. So we're going in here. I've colored her little outfit green because I'm trying to keep, I have a problem with being matchy-matchy. So I just gave you guys this whole spiel about making sure that you are picking colors that work well together, and I'm immediately breaking that rule because I colored her outfit green and my glow is like a pinkish purple, which I just told you not to do. However, this particular combination of like purples, pinkish purples, does pretty well with this yellow-green combination, but that is really trial and error, and I would not recommend trying it on a piece that you have already spent time coloring it. That's hey, I'm going to try this on some scrap paper before I apply it to make sure I'm happy with the way that it looks. Where I ran into the problems here, I didn't actually mind the purple on the green. Where I ran into the problems was the purple was a little bit too close to the skin tone and to the browns that I chose. So there wasn't enough contrast, and it just kind of melts into it, especially with like her hands and the handle of the spoon. It's really hard to see that it's truly a glow there. So I maybe would have switched those colors up, but that's okay. All of it is a learning process. Even as I'm trying to teach this to you guys, there are still things that I can improve upon for sure, because I'm not perfect, and we're all, just in different places with our art journey. So I can, tell you what I know now, and I can tell you in the voiceover what maybe I would have done a little bit differently. And hopefully that will lead you guys to doing a little bit of your own experimenting, but ultimately being successful in creating a card with a light source shading that you're happy with. So here we're adding in the purples, and the way that the stamp's drawn, it's kind of like overflowing over the top, like over the brim of the cauldron. And so there is a little bit of shading that would be set inside the cauldron with the highlight on the edge. And then here is where I'm starting to add the glow. And you can see when I go in there, I tried the VO1 first, and it just was not enough. It did not have enough punch to carry it. So then I had to bring in the VO4, which is definitely a little bit brighter, and I was blending it out with the VO1, just so I had a nicer line there. But again, I think the VO1 is just too close. Like, it's just too close to the skin tone and the hair for us to have really any contrast. So for this little jar, I colored it as if it was empty. I just used one of the blues that we used from the Wizard's outfit. And then that is going to be it for the coloring portion. I'm going to give you, like a good look at it. Here's what we colored. And then tomorrow we will do the ink blending, the building of the cards, kind of bringing the whole thing together. So I hope this was helpful to you. Please let me know in the comments if you have any questions. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I always appreciate your time, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.